Hello Tarot fans, welcome to another edition of Sicx Tarot. I'm your fantastic host Sicx. Thank you very much for watching. Now, I know it's been quite a while since my last video and I do apologise for that, but unfortunately life kind of takes over a bit. What we're doing, a wedding reception. Congratulations guys to Sophie and Mike. Thank you very much for having me be your celebrant. I'm much honoured. And also I've been doing a lot of Christmas circus events as well and just been keeping really busy. But as it's the winter celebrations, I thought I'd do a nice video talking about a very nice deck that's worth having for a nice seasonal gift. So without further ado, roll on that intro. Man, it's been a while since I've said that. Today we're going to look at the Golden Viconti Tarot. Now some of you might recognise the style of this. It is actually basically a reprint of the Golden Tarot, also known as Visconti This Word Tarot deck. I've not done a review of this as of yet, but I do have the collector's version, which has a couple of cool bits inside, but I thought I would be doing this deck instead, as this has a kind of nicer, glossier sort of look to it. First off, we'll get the old tape measure. The box itself measures to about 11 inches by 11 centimeters by just short of 16 centimeters. So it's a hard case box. Here we have the moon on the front, and nice shininess there, which is throughout the deck. And on the back we just have some demonstrations of some of the others, and it says major arcana only, so just 22. This might be quite a relatively short video. So nice hard cardboard, and this might be a shocker to you all, Le Scarabeo. So of course I've got Le Scarabeo deck. So the book itself is quite small, and it pretty much just has the names of all the tarot and just like a brief description. And as you go through, it has a couple of layouts, and then just the same again in various languages. So it's quite a simple one. So if you do like just the small decks, just the major only, this is quite nice. So of course you've got your nice screen card here, which has the Magician. So just take this out. The back of the cards look quite nice, nicely decorative. Something you'd have as a nice wall hanging. Man, I like wall hangings. I don't have any. I mean, I do. They're called posters. But so the artwork is actually slightly different to the Golden Tarot. So I might do a comparison video another time. And also, sorry about the quality of the lighting here. I don't actually have the ring light on, because as these are quite reflective, I don't want too much shine on them. So first we have the Fool, my favourite card. And so these are based off of the oldest, one of the older tarot decks, so around like the 1700s. And so the artwork is quite old looking. So this kind of this deck basically predates both the Rider-Waite-Smith and also the Tarot of the Marseille. So this predates both of those. So as you can see here, the Fool has this club or a stick, but not necessarily a bindle. And he's kind of wearing kind of poor clothes, and he has these trousers around his ankles. And he also has like feathers in his hair as well. And it's kind of hard to lift. Some of these might be kind of horn-like. At least that's what I usually see. We've got mountains in the background and just kind of like a nice tapestry sort of decoration at the back. And the tapestry decoration is all throughout. So here we have the Magician in his nice reds, and with his table full of the various items. So you've got a bowl, cup, a wand in his hand there, what looks like a knife, and a couple of coins. And he's seated on like a golden chair. So it shows he's a man of scholarly, and is also It's quite important. And as you can see here, with just traditional Lascarabeo, it's got the different languages in the corners there as well. And here we have the High Priestess. So we've got the English at the bottom here, and so once again, not as you'd see. So basically, these were kind of based off of family members of these particular wealthy houses. So some of these portraits are actually based off of actual people. The Golden Tarot book of the original set actually goes into a bit more detail. The book itself is quite interesting, so I would recommend looking into those. But she's kind of wearing more kind of plain clothes, plain colours, so nothing too flashy, but she has a really nice like 3-tiered crown. Pious is the word I'm looking for. Her clothing are quite pious and quite modest. The staff there and the book there. And then we have the Empress. And personally, visually, I'm not a fan of this one, as it's a nice blue, but because you've got the golden background, I think like the yellow dress, sort of the yellow just doesn't work, and it just looks a bit too bland. The crown looks nice though. Once again, same with the king, but then as the king is like the masculine, and the father and the queen is the feminine and the mother, it would make sense that they'd be clothed the same, although they don't tend to be facing in different directions. So that's something that was kind of added later on, but because in the Rider-Waite-Smith, the Emperor and the Empress face opposite directions, as they are opposites in the masculine and the feminine. But here we have the king here, nice bit of greenery here, but once again, he kind of just blends in too much for my taste. Now we have the Hierophant. Now, in my opinion, this works a little better. Granted, he's still wearing the yellow, but there's enough green interwoven, there's enough breaks in the colour for it to not look too, doesn't look like it mixes in too much. But I still think that looks quite nice, in the white ruffled shirt there as well. And also note he has the same staff as the High Priestess, but in the opposite hand. Next we have the Lovers, and in this one it's rather than Adam and Eve at the Tree of Knowledge and Life and Eternal Life, it's just a man and a woman and an angel above, blindfolded, which I think is kind of interesting, standing on a plinth. And it's the man and woman holding hands, which is quite interesting. So it's always interesting to kind of, as these are older than the Rider-Waite and the Marseille, it's always very interesting to kind of see what was kept and what was changed. So now we have the Chariot. Not quite sure if that's a man or a woman on the chariot. It could be either. I'm probably going to say a woman, which is also interesting in the fact that in modern decks, the charioteer tends to be a man, unless the deck is of a specific like female empowerment style, in kind of like the Modern Witch Tarot, for example. Yeah, they traditionally tend to look more masculine than feminine, so I'm not quite sure if that's an effeminate looking man or a woman. I'd probably say more woman, just because of some of the other way they are dressed. But the horses, the whiteness of the horses look quite nice, and the blues really stand out on the horses. And they are Pegasi, in fact, because of the wings appear to be on the horses rather than the chariot itself. That's pretty cool. Although I know that Pegasus is itself an individual animal rather than a species, but you know what I mean. So next we have Justice. Now this one's quite nice because you've got a good blend of colours. You've got a man on a horse. You've got a knight above, as if maybe like the deliverer of the This is like the deliverer of justice, and this is Justice herself. But yeah, there's a lot of green here, and I do like that. As I said, it does kind of break up some of the blandness you kind of got with some of the previous cards throughout. But the blue sky, the green grass, the grey dress, the blue and the blue tapestry, it's just really quite striking compared to some of the other cards. So next we have the Hermit. Now, the Hermit himself looks quite nice. Not not too wizened, because sometimes you get this hermit doesn't look like they're like shunned from society, or that they don't look like they're kind of like as rough and ragged as some of the others. But he has more of a look of just, he's not necessarily, he looks like he's someone who kind of sits outside of society but not lives outside of it, if that makes sense, with the nice blues here and the cool hat. And even the hourglass is something that you don't tend to see with the Hierophant. It tends to be more of a lantern. So next we have the wheel. Now once again, there's a lot of yellow going on here outside of the background. It seems to be enough to just be striking, but not too bland. It's not too bland, but it's like skirting on the edge of blandness. I do like the I do like the colour schemes here as well. So you've got the gold and blue at the top, and then down here you've got the faded pink, and then the white, and then going back up again you have the green, which I think is a nice little blend here. And the angel in the middle, it's more of that implication of there's divine movement, but it's just moving regardless of what's going on. So it's not choosing to prefer one thing over the other, it's just how nature goes. So next we have strength. Now this one's quite interesting because because in modern tarot, strength is usually a woman subduing an animal, be it a lion or something else, but in calm ways, whilst this one is physical brute force, which is kind of counter to how the card is perceived now. So that in itself I think is quite interesting. And once again, I like the blue, the reddish pink, the greens, and the greens here, and the medieval lion. The medieval lion not looking any bigger, like a medium-sized dog. I always like medieval animals like that. That's pretty good. But yeah, once again, a nice colour scheme, but a very different kind of feel to as we see them in modern day. Next we have the Hanged Man. Once again, this Hanged Man looks very calm, but as you can see there is no halo around their head. That's another more of a, by recent addition, I'd say another recent addition, but you know, the ones we are used to seeing tend to be just shy of 100 years, but it's still, as I said, it's still nice to see what's been added, what's been taken away. And so them not being hung from a tree, they are just hung from a hangman's post, scaffold rather. Still head over the water, and nice little hills there. So not a lot of colour going on, but I still feel that it's still striking enough and not too bland. There's nothing worse than having a bland deck. So now we have the Death card, and Death isn't really doing much except just standing there. But I like the idea that this Death appears skeletal, but not. But this is just more like someone who's just really thin and showing bones through their skin, rather than just them just being a skeleton. And you can't quite see it in the camera here, but the gap, you might not be able to see it, but these little gaps here are also the shiny gold as well, so I think that's quite cool. And rather than having a wreath, a scythe rather, they have a bow. I think it's kind of interesting. A nice little white bandana, because it might be really chilly and they might need to keep their head warm. So next we have Temperance, and in this depiction there is no water going between the two, but I like the star pattern on their dress here, on her dress here. It's very nice, and not quite sure what's going on here. Maybe they're on like maybe that's just like a bit of a wall, and they're behind the wall. Not quite sure, but though there's no liquids pouring between the two jugs, the artwork on the jug looks quite nice, and you know, they're at peace and they're calm. Then we have the Devil card. Quite different to how it's depicted in the Golden Tarot. As I said, I'll probably do a comparison at some point. But this one's a more modern version comparatively. But I like the so you have the cedar style. So it's got the goat legs, kind of like, it's hard to more kind of slightly angel wings, but not quite. Despite the colour, more of the shape, and of course the traditional goatee, horns, etc. pitchfork, and 2 humans, 2 people either side. What I find interesting is the fact that they're standing over a pit of fire rather than being surrounded by it. So that's kind of an interesting take on that one. Next we have the tower. Now the tower I think looks really cool in this one. The gold working really well. The gold background working really well with how the tower is falling over. Once again with the blue, the greens, the really nice colour that we have with the 2 people falling from the tower. The very dark green and the very dark blue, because some of the colours tend to be a bit faded in some of the others, but these are quite dark and I quite like that. And like the detail of the building I think is really nice as well. I always do like the nice little lightning strike. The lightning itself has a bit of gold along the edge there as well. But yeah, this one does look really nice. So next we have the star. Once again, nice patterned, but not a star pattern. I'd be kind of disappointed if they did that, but they have a star patterned cloak. And the fact they've got all the 3 major colours here, with the blue, red and green as all being worn, rather than just like a bit of here, a bit of there, a bit of everywhere. Also, if you notice her hair, I may not have noticed for some of the others, but her hair is also kind of plaited, which always makes to me think of like wheat and grain stuff when referring to tarot, kind of like a harvest sort of feel. So then we have the moon. Looks like the same kind of background. She looks like she's standing in the same area. I don't think anything's particularly striking with this moon, in the fact that she's just holding a crescent moon in her hand. But the red looks quite nice. Not too, as I was saying with the tower, this red is kind of a slightly faded red, whilst the tower is quite striking and quite dark. So there's not a lot of dark reds in this, but this one looks quite nice in contrast with the darkish blue and like the light blonde of her hair as well. So that does look quite nice. Next we have the sun. Now, I'm a bit weak on my mythology, but I do believe that one of the ancient thoughts was that the sun was the head of a god, and so this is the head being carried by someone else on a floating. They're either running on the sky or on a cloud, but either way, I think that looks pretty nifty. And also I like the kind of the blue mountains here, so that'd either be representing the waves of the water rather than just like deeper peeled background, but I still think that looks quite nice. And it kind of has like the playful brazenness of like, hey, look what I've just got, you can't catch me. So next we have Judgement. So here we have 2 angels and people waking up from their coffin. I see an elderly man there and 2 women. But usually it's just, so what we're used to seeing is like 1 angel here and like the dead coming back from the ground here. However, I think this might be St. Peter, or like, I think it's supposed to be St. Peter who waits for you at the gates. So that might be St. Peter calling everyone forward rather than just an angel. And I still think it's kind of cool. But yes, and you've got 2 angels on the side with their blue horns, with their little trumpets. So I think that's quite nice with the blue. And everyone kind of looks quite chilled as well. At the back, they're like, ah, what a nice sleep that was. And so last we have the world. And this one kind of, I think, is quite interesting. And the fact that it's being held by 2 angels on the ground. So it may be a representation of heaven, and that the world is being held up by the divine, be it God or whatever or whichever. So you could say this is a representation of the world, or just the kingdom or the city in which this is based. So it could just be the world of this deck is just this town and this castle here, or this castle represents the entire world. Once again, that's more a detail that you'd find more in the books rather than just on observation. So if you are a collector and you do like to know more about your tarot, I do recommend you reading the books that these come with. So that's been my review. I hope you enjoyed. Once again, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. I hope you all have happy holidays, and I'll catch you all on the flip side.